Welcome everybody to this Rad Pod Breaker. If you see this cheesy grin on my face, it's because I'm so excited about our guest. We are bringing in Laura Pearl. She is the executive director of Flip the Vote. That's flipthevote.org. They do amazing work supporting community groups that are pivotal in literally flipping the vote and battling voter suppression wherever they find it. Their work has been so incredibly valuable in states like Arizona and Ohio and North Carolina. And we're going to tell you about that. Let's bring Laura in. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. Today is a very important day in American history. Today is 9/11, but it's also a reminder of why our democracy is so important to fight for and to support. And so, can you just let our viewers know Flip the Vote's mission statement and some of the brass tacks elements of your group?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. First, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation and chat, talk a little bit about what we do at Flip the Vote and my work. Our mission is to build a more just and equitable democracy, American democracy, and we do that by aiding people in activating their personal networks and becoming an activist in their own right. So that's our mission, and there's a ton packed into all of that, and each element of it you can, I could talk about for an hour, just all of the different, nuances to that mission statement that has so much juicy stuff in it. But what we do and what we've done is really at the core, it's called relational fundraising. So the idea that when you are contacted by someone who you have, a shared, maybe it's your neighbor, maybe it's someone who you went to high school with, someone that you have a shared identity with, you feel a degree of trust towards them. When they reach out and share something with you, you're much more likely to listen. So what we try to do in Flip the Vote is identify people who are really politically engaged. They care deeply about, preserving our democracy and advancing it and bettering it, and finding those people and helping them become, empowered, giving them the tools to activate their own networks. So what we do is host house parties. They've been largely over Zoom in the past. We're a product of the pandemic. So that was a little bit of a blessing in disguise. We got to have so many Zoom house parties in 2020. We hosted over 150 parties. So each has an individual host who we provide them all the tools, and they invite their network, and their friends show up. It could be friends from any point in their life, all over the country. They come together to support the person who invited them. We share our presentation with Flip the Vote. It's full of data. It's full of fun. It's full of, we try to make activism and politics a lot less intimidating, because it definitely can be. And our ask at the end of our presentation, at the end of these parties, we call them parties to trick people into actually showing up, is the ask is always twofold. It's to invest in the organizations that we recommend. We ask people to invest meaningfully, which that word can take on, it's a different number for everyone based on their financial situation. And the second question is the one that's really important, is we invite everyone to host their own Flip the Vote house party. So I joke it's kind of like Tupperware party for democracy, because every individual house party leads to 2 to 5 more. So it has this awesome snowball effect that when we get started and it starts rolling and every party is breeding more and more, it becomes almost overwhelming that we can't even fit them on the calendar. But in doing this, we've raised over $10 million since our founding in 2018, largely for grassroots, get out the vote organizations that are centered in BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. So proud of the work that we do. It's amazing to support the groups that we do and do it in this kind of creative way that's bringing new people into political activism.
I love it. The reason that we became aware of you and Flip the Vote became went on our radar is because one of the members of my Substack community, Betty Dangerous, Bettina, every time she would talk in one of our speakeasy Zoom salons, she'd be like talking about Flip the Vote. She sent me a to what was like one of your Tupperware parties for democracy. And I got to meet all these incredible people doing incredible work across the country. And I was so inspired. And let our viewers know, because many of our viewers are quite generous and I'm sure they're interested in supporting you. High five, you can put up the donate link at some point in this conversation. That would be amazing. But let our viewers know like how you guys have sort of an inroad into who you support so they can feel really good about the organizations you're supporting. Because again, I was very impressed with the level of talent and dedication.
Yeah. First, have to just shout out Bettina for connecting us, because that is as true to what we do as it could be. It's so relationship based. Is Bettina's a member of our community, loves what we do, and shared it with you, and here I am. So I think that speaks to the relational piece of what we do, which is fun. So our organizations that we support, like I mentioned, Grassroots, voter engagement, and voter registration groups that are in the most critical states. So to identify the groups that we support, we have two kind of basic questions. The first is, where, in what states, would one extra vote have the greatest impact? So that's, the marginal difference between a Democrat winning the seat and a Republican. A great example of this is here in Arizona. Our Attorney General, Chris Mays, won by just 256 votes. So when you're registering, it's amazing. That's a statewide office that was decided by less than 300 votes. It's unbelievable. So incredible victory. And the group that we support here in Arizona is called Lucha. Oh, I'm in Phoenix. When I say here, I'm talking about Arizona. Yeah. Our group that we support in Arizona is called Lucha, Living United for Change in Arizona. They're focused in the Latino community in Phoenix, Flagstaff, Tucson, and other smaller parts of more rural parts of the state. And Lucha last year, so Chris Mays won by 256 votes. Katie Hobbs won by around 17,000 votes. Lucha registered 22,000 voters in 2022. So that number just speaks for itself.
That's huge.
And of course, It's huge. And that's not to say, of course, that there wasn't organizing going on in all corners of the state. I'm not saying, it was Lucha and it was Flip the Vote. That's definitely not the takeaway from that. But the takeaway is that when we're winning by such slim margins and such incredibly important races, Katie Hobbs beat an election denier who wanted to be our governor. Chris Mays is going to be the person who is in charge of prosecuting abortion in our state. We have an abortion ban at 15 weeks right now, and she's sworn to never prosecute a doctor who performs an abortion. That's politics right there, is how intensely it impacts our day-to-day lives. So an example of just how impactful and powerful these groups are in their organizing. That's how we really got on a tangent there, but that's how we pick our states.
Perfect. That was perfect. And I also that could not have illustrated it better. One of the things I love about what you guys do is you also try to find organizations that are doing great work year round. And can you talk a little bit about like what the ideal benefactor of Flip the Vote dollars would be?
Right. So we have a kind of set of criteria that we look at when we're selecting our partner groups, where we're moving the money. And I say moving because we as Flip the Vote actually don't skim anything off of donations that are made through our website. They go directly to our groups, which I think is really a powerful piece of our mission, is that, donors are getting directly to the groups where it's going to be most impactful. But some of the criteria that we have in selecting our groups, it's very important to us that it's year-round organizing, like you mentioned, Heidi, that these groups are not in the way that no matter how charismatic, how great their policy, a candidate is going to come before an election, win or lose, they're going to leave after the election. These groups are doing this sort of organizing that can build real community power because they are always there. Election cycle or not, they're responding to their communities. They're doing the sort of work that really makes politics real to a person's individual day-to-day life. They're talking about how high rent is and climate change and reproductive justice. These are the conversations that they're having in the off years when people, kind of want to sit back and not pay attention to politics. This is the most important time, is this off year. This is when we show people whose votes we're asking for every 2 years in November, we're showing them why they vote in this off period. So that's what these groups are incredibly great at, is showing up during the times when people have kind of left this vacuum of political organizing. So that's a really important piece of our kind of ethos in the organizations that we pick. Another is that they are focused on the new American majority, which is a term that's used to describe this, what will soon be a majority of American voters: young people, people of color, and women. So this, a lot of those groups, particularly people of color, have seen such underinvestment politically, and what these organizations are doing in a really sincere and genuine way is investing in these communities. They're hiring people from their own communities. They're hiring young people or women or people of color to organize, paying them a living wage, educating them, and making them feel really empowered with their understanding of the political process so that they can go back into their communities and, speak in their own terms about why it matters. So I think that's really beautiful. That element of the work is our investment in communities that haven't seen it the way that they deserve. Okay, so I've said, our year-round organizing, and then I think there are a few other criteria that we talk about. One is an underinvestment. An organization, we get their budgets, we do that real deep dive into, what are the programs that you want to expand? If you had more money, what would you do? And having those conversations are really fun, because that's what we do, is we give these orgs more money. And so seeing, what they'll usually send us is a bare bones budget, this is what we know we can afford. And then this dream budget that's sometimes 3 times the size,
right,
where they're talking about what they could do if they, had the freedom and the financial ability to do really the organizing work that they dreamed of. So that's really special, is having that, those conversations are so exciting to see what the work would look like if there weren't some of the limitations that exist, financial barriers. So scalability, in one word, is another criteria, is the plans that these groups have if they had the finances to run these programs that they dream of.
Oh, I love it. Hi-Fi, I'm sure you have a question. Go ahead and jump in.
I do. So when I was reading about your group, one of the coolest things I read was what you guys helped do in Georgia, and that was creating campaign materials in 8 different languages for voters in Georgia. And I think that's absolutely brilliant and is often overlooked by American politics. We are a country of immigrants, right? All of us. I mean,
totally.
Unless your ancestors were here for 10,000 years, we're all immigrants.
Unless you're indigenous, you migrated here.
Right.
So tell me more about how do you find communities that you think will be receptive to your messaging, and how do you look to work with those communities? Where does your data come from? That kind of stuff.
Great.
Sure, that's a great question. We partner really closely. Many of our groups we've actually worked with since 2020 are grassroots partners in the states that we're involved in. And we partner closely with the Movement Voter Project. They are a donor advisor, is kind of the role that they fill in the funding space. And they also, they have a slate of 600 grassroots groups that they've done their level of vetting. And so we came to them in 2020 and presented our criteria that I just talked about and said, what groups in these states, at the time we were in Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan, pulled those out. They change based on each cycle, but We asked in those states, what are the groups that fit our criteria? They come back with a short list. Then we meet with each organization, because when we're talking about, having meaningful connection and doing work that is really entrenched in communities and not extractive, and the concept of investment rather than just, pouring money in and having no intention behind it, is when we meet with each of these organizations' leadership teams, we get to hear those plans. Things like, so the organization that ran that program in Georgia, they printed voter guides in 8 different languages. It's called the Asian American Advocacy Fund, or AAAF. They've been a great partner, and we're still, really close to them and excited about what they're doing in this election cycle. But what's so interesting is the way that AAAF came to be was that there was such a lack of engagement for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in Georgia, but it was such a fastly growing group. There was a gap, there was just this vacuum of information where people wanted to vote, but perhaps because the ballot or the ballot materials weren't in their native language, that's a huge barrier. It's hard to really process these complicated, nuanced political issues if it's not presented to you in your own language, right? So AAAF took that, observation about their lives, and it's run by incredible young people. So a lot of them speak about, their immigrant parents and trying to talk politics with their immigrant parents, and it being really difficult, and having to kind of unlearn and break down things because of those language barriers. So they said, everyone's parents deserves this sort of really clearly explained political information. So that's what inspired that work, is the printing of guides in multiple languages. I'll say Lucha and our partner in Nevada, Make the Road Action, do the same. They provide all of their materials in both English and Spanish for the same reasons that, even if you are an English speaker, it's just your second language, it's just so comforting to have it in front of you in your first language. It's just a degree of understanding that they couldn't have had otherwise. And they're getting it from a trusted source, from, their kids or their kids' friends or whomever in their community. Right. It's very special that they can provide that tool and really let people engage with politics on their own terms.
I love that. And one of the things that we are dealing with in a horrible, sometimes terrifying way is the amount of voter suppression, gerrymandering, of course. And I did an article with David Pepper a few months ago showing that a lot of the Jim Crow era tactics are being rebooted in order to disenfranchise voters of color. And I listened to one of your events where a gentleman in North Carolina is really trying to focus his efforts and his group's efforts on raising awareness about that and really making sure people get to the polls. In the numbers that you just showed, where the margins can be so small, how important is it to be funding groups that are directly fighting to expose and rise above voter suppression, because those tactics are proliferating through many states?
Mm-hmm. We have a few little taglines that we always kind of can sum up some of these really big, juicy questions, but we say the best antidote to voter suppression is voter education. And these organizations, it goes back to trust again. They have these trusted relationships in their communities because they show up off years, election years. They're always, doing really community-based work. And I think that allows those conversations around voter suppression in whatever form it's taking. They can share the simple things. These are the pieces of ID you need to bring. This is when your ballot is due. This is how you request an absentee ballot. All of those seemingly innocuous rules, laws around voting that you could make the argument and people do, it makes voting more secure, but in people's lived reality, it just makes it more difficult to vote.
Right.
So what these groups can do is step in, and when they distribute voter guides, right at the top in huge letters, mail back your ballot by this date, drop off your ballot at one of these locations, find your polling place here. It's this combination of just pure information. That is truly just an education issue. But because, everything's always changing, they're throwing up new barriers, it's hard to keep up. You're busy. It's really hard to keep up. And these groups can just provide that information in a really safe place where people are prepared to learn and absorb it. And whether that's through voter guides or events or their social media, they're giving that education to really combat the efforts to suppress their votes. And they're rampant. It's very,
yes.
I think Ohio is a really interesting example of voter suppression and glaring. Sometimes, like I said, it's ID laws and things that on the surface seem simple or, maybe common sense. In reality, of course, they do still suppress voters.
Mm-hmm.
But Ohio, abortion activists and this broad coalition across the state who support access to healthcare and reproductive freedom collected enough signatures to put on their November 2023 ballot a ballot initiative that would amend their state constitution, and it would ensure the right to abortion for all Ohioans. Incredible. Very exciting. The Republicans in the state legislature then said, don't like that. And they
exactly.
It's so grinds my gears. It's so, they decided that they were like, ooh, the people have too much power. Let's take that away.
Mm-hmm.
So they tried to change the rules, move the goalposts, and increase the threshold to pass a voter initiative, something that voters put on the ballot. They wanted to pass it from a simple majority of 50% to 60%.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is the education that has to go on around that to help people understand why that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so much work. So we have partners in Ohio. We're doing a special effort right now to help pass that ballot initiative, because when this effort to change the threshold, it should have in theory been on the November ballot with the initiative. But the Republicans, again, moving the goalposts, put it a single issue, literally printed a ballot with one thing on it.
Yeah.
And they had to, in August, when it's not a typical election time, people are not paying attention, they had to defeat this pretty evil thing.
Yeah.
And they did. They smashed it.
Yeah.
13 points, I think it was.
Yeah.
Which is
huge.
Huge. And such a testament to, grassroots organizing and how
absolutely
we can sometimes, lose faith in people's people.
Yeah.
And that Republicans and Democrats and Libertarians, Green Party, whoever the hell in Ohio, they said, no, you're not going to change the rules on us.
Yeah.
So going into November, I think that's very exciting about Ohio. It's looking good. People need to vote, of course. If you're in Ohio and you're listening, vote and tell 5 friends to vote. But we feel good about this. There'll be a destination, sounds a little too fun, but a destination for people in that area of the country who need an abortion, because there are a lot of states around there that you cannot access it. And I think that is such a testament to, one, the power of the people, and to grassroots organizing. This is this incredible coalition across all different demographics. The groups that we're supporting in Ohio are ruralorganizing.org, who, the name, as you might guess, engage with rural voters. Freedom Block, which is working in the legacy cities in Ohio, so cities that have kind of seen, manufacturing or whatever sort of jobs that held up their economy leave those cities, and there's, just kind of a lack of engagement and empathy for that sort of change and in the way of life of a city. So they're focused on the Black communities in these legacy cities. And then lastly, Red Wine and Blue, which is such a fun name, but they organize suburban women, which is an incredibly, surprisingly diverse. I think people hear suburbs and think white, but it's really not, the case. There are so many women of color and moms of color. They do a lot of organizing with moms around, book bans and now abortion. So it's this coalition all coming together to fight for this common goal, which is our right to our bodies. And I just think that speaks to the power of organizing and doing, intentional, thoughtful work with partners across identities and figuring out where we all need to show up for each other.
Oh, I love it. You're looking at an Akron
I'd like
boy.
To say, I'm Akron, Ohio, and I gotta say there's 4 things right now. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things right now, but the first is, we again have unconstitutionally gerrymandered maps that we're voting against, right? Yep. We have the abortion issue. So everyone in Ohio, yes on 1. We also have the First Energy bribery scandal, which is the largest bribery scandal in Ohio's history. And that's all the Ohio GOP. And then the 4th, and probably my favorite, is we're going to legalize marijuana in Ohio. So yes on 1, yes on 2.
Big yeses.
Yes.
Big yeses.
So what I
There's
would
a
like
reason
to
they
do,
call me Hi-Fi.
So what I would like to do with the few minutes that we have left here, and I'd like you to give 1, 2, or 3 other examples to show how your dollars to the right communities made a difference in some incredibly important races, because you already gave that incredible example of Arizona. But if there's 1, 2, or 3 other ones, that would be perfect. So there you go.
Perfect. Some ways that we made a difference I love to talk about. That's fun for me. In 2022, which was an off year, off years are always difficult in terms of moving money and voter turnout and all of those things. We moved over $3 million to a slate of 8 organizations. One of them was Take Action Minnesota, based in Minnesota, and it's a multiracial, across class, across gender organization that is just doing incredible work. So they did huge get out the vote efforts. They endorsed a lot of really strong candidates who are forward thinking and fighting for people. And I think what's so special about the results in 2022 in Minnesota, which, is as close to being blue of a purple state as you get. Right. Minnesota is so purple. The 2 seats, so Minnesota now has a Democratic governor and control of both parties, both chambers of the state legislature, the House and Senate. They flipped the Senate by 2 seats, and the total votes that those 2 seats were flipped by were under 1,000 votes.
Nice.
Unbelievable.
Snap.
Every vote counts. So I know everyone's sick of hearing that your vote matters, but I think incredible, huge news, but even more exciting is what they've actually been able to do with that. The Democratic governor, control of the state legislature, free school meals in public schools. Oh, it gives me chills. Like, that's just so exciting. They passed a law that prevents discrimination around hair. It's called the Crown Act, and it's to protect Black women and however they choose to show up in the workplace. Incredible. They're now a climate leader in the country. They passed a clean energy bill to be, I think it's by 2040, 100% renewable energy in the state of Minnesota. And that's with 1 seat majority. Just 1. Like, it's so Can you tell? It gets me so jazzed.
Me too. Me too.
And I just think that's such a beacon for what's possible. What happened in Minnesota and Michigan is the same. Michigan, our partner there, Detroit Action, incredible work, engaging in Black and brown communities in Detroit. Michigan is the same. They've passed gun legislation that it's just common sense gun reform. They're, in that same 2022 election, they enshrined the right to abortion in their state constitution. And it's just such like it's the states where we're actually seeing results and we're seeing things. People will say, oh, well, what does that cost to give, all kids a free breakfast and lunch? Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
to be so
exactly
flippant about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Every child deserves a meal.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's just those sort of wins that are so basic. And when we get them, that's going to be normalized in Minnesota forever. You're not taking away those kids' lunches and breakfasts. Yeah. Can you imagine, the outrage when that would happen? Because it's so basic. It's disappointing that it's taking this long, but that there's progress happening. I think to prevent that despair from setting in, and that, it's so easy to slip into that and think this is so basic, children should not be hungry. We're getting there. We have to hold on to the victories in Minnesota, in Michigan, in California. They're doing climate legislation. We really, even here in Arizona, our all state employees last week, they just announced get a significant amount of paternity leave. Great. And that's setting the standard now for employers in Arizona. If you have a choice between no paternity leave at a job that pays less than a government employee who gets enough time to spend with their child in their infancy, that they can not be just totally hamstrung with childcare, these things I think are going to become so normal, and I'm so excited for that day.
Me too. Me too.
We're right on the cusp. I really believe that. And maybe, I've been called a Pollyanna. I'll be a Pollyanna, whatever. I believe that, totally. I believe that we're on the verge of we have to be on the verge of making real meaningful change. And I do think we're there.
I am not opposed to a bit of hopium on a Monday morning.
Simon Rosenberg shout out.
Yeah, Simon Rosenberg shout out. Exactly. I just listened. Simon. Hi, Simon. We all just listened to you. Many of us listened to him when he joined Ruth Ben-Ghiat's Lucid, and he filled all of us up with this kind of, just positive energy, because we have examples that when we come together and work together, the sane majority wants to be a better neighbor, a decent human, and does not want people to suffer, and does not like book bans and all these basic things. I am so grateful that you joined us today, and I'm so grateful for the work that you and your volunteers are doing. And I would like everybody who can to donate to flipthevote.org and help them keep doing this wonderful work. And hi-fi, any last thoughts?
Keep kicking ass, man.
Yes, keep kicking ass, Laura Pearl.
Taking names. Thanks.
All right, you guys, flipthevote.org. We have a big year ahead of us, and heading into 2024. It's going to be gnarly.
Wait.
That's exactly
Don't
right.
Wait for 2024.
That's right. That's right. Let's
get on it now.
Let's focus on the labor of democracy today.